Well, Michael's already there.
Yeah, it took me a moment. It wanted me to update the app, which is a bit annoying.
Oh, goodness me.
All right.
It's going to be a very small meeting because
That's fine.
I don't think anyone got the invitation. You didn't get it, Michael.
I did.
Greg didn't get it. Oh, you got your own one. You sent it.
I did.
But
So,
I didn't send it to you. The one I sent didn't go anywhere.
I would send it to the whole membership. So, you know, if it fails, it fails.
You sent it to the entire membership.
I sent it to the entire New South Wales membership as per the last download that we got.
Okay. Well, that should do it then.
I would have thought. And I got a few responses. Mike Banfield sent his apologies. Joseph Van Meulen said thank you. So I know it's out there.
Okay, so people have been receiving it. That's good to see.
Yeah.
Right.
The next time I'll try and use the website. We should try and use the website, which is I think better at these kind of things than my email address, my email account. But it worked.
The website is what I used. And it didn't
Oh, you guys are live.
Good.
Live.
Unfortunately, no one else is here apart from us.
Oh, we're a bit early. I mean.
Oh no, it's only 7:30. I think that the thing actually kicks off. So you know.
Yeah. So the only reason I suggested we come over early is that Alex was going to try and join this meeting a bit early, so I wanted to make sure that we didn't leave her hanging.
Did you get a copy of the minutes, Michael?
I did. I apologise, but I wasn't actually planning to use them. I was just going to make this a real informal meeting. So much to your disgust, I guess.
Okay.
Well anyway, Michael, when I'm able to chair a meeting, I'll follow Mark's agenda anyway.
Yeah. Well, the formal meetings, like the one in October, definitely that's when we run the agenda. But this one, given that we've just had the AGM, I figured that we don't really need to be super formal. We can just talk about stuff and get on with it.
Well, the other thing, Michael, if you want to have some degree of formality, notice there's going to be chit chat and there's also going to be stuff on the text blogs, on the text chat. So I suppose really somebody should take the initiative of reading stuff out from the chat that seems relevant. So I would suggest that might be an option. So obviously people can try to put up their hand and interrupt and so on and speak verbally if they want to. They can also type stuff in. And if we have someone sort of paying attention to what's on text, well, maybe yourself, if you can both chair the meeting and do that, you know, that might be a good thing. So
You guys are live.
Yeah.
So
there's hardly anyone here. So
we can hear.
we know that, Jason. Yeah,
we know that.
Maybe you don't want to talk about that kind of stuff.
You've got an echo. There's an echo. There's an echo.
Why wouldn't we want to talk about it? You think it's a secret or something?
Not secret. So the agenda or the structure that I figured we'd go through is let Alex do her presentation, then talk about the structural changes, then talk about Bundanoon, and there's Andreas was talking about calling the Bunnings and things like that. So whether he wanted to talk a little bit more about that, but there's only those 3, maybe 4 things
Also,
that I figured.
Michael, if you've been paying attention to Facebook, I'm giving a talk on intellectual property on Monday. So I would like to plug that. Now, the other thing is I've actually been getting in with the Australian Automotive Aftermarket Association, and I guess I've been reaching out a bit on the whole right to repair thing, which there's a bit of overlap with electric vehicles, but you know, I won't overstate it, but you know, hey, I'm going in that direction, and
okay. No, we can raise that.
Having said that, I don't wish to go overboard and bore people with details of the thing on Monday, but it would be nice to mention.
Okay, we can do that. So, hello, Stephen.
What was that, Michael?
I was saying Stephen Conwell has joined, so he's nice and early.
Going live in.
Why isn't anyone sharing their screens? Or sorry, turning the video on. Greg,
COVID beards like myself.
Okay, so I'm eating.
Very dramatic, sir. Very dramatic. You know.
I'm eating dinner at the moment.
Oh, we've already picked
We
out on
already had our
pizzas.
dinner.
What's that?
Oh, you got to move it so it focuses, Jason. That's
Going live
yeah.
in 1 minute and 31 seconds.
Do we have somewhere to
I can see
clip all
you guys
that? Cut!
Anyway, we're gonna start the music.
The music.
Or
Yeah.
how about da 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 da?
Anyway, 1 minute 13.
1 minute 13. So Alex hasn't joined, which means if she doesn't, then I'll stall and talk about the structural changes to begin.
1 minute.
All right, since we've got a minute, I'll just jump in. Jeff O'Toole's ordered my charger, controller, BMS, etc. from WA. So that should
Talk
arrive
about that
soon.
in the
Reports.
part.
Reports. We might have a section for reports. You know.
Yeah, we do have
Yep.
a section.
I just thought I'd throw that
My
in.
photo of my BMW upgrade.
Oh, okay. Show you the BMW.
Yeah, and I wish Jeff would bloody do something with my i3, but anyway.
All right. Get that ready.
Yeah, I think I'm on a waiting list still though. About 2 months down the track, but he's ordered the parts.
No, okay. Well.
Well, he's obviously got your money then.
Actually, I owe him some money too.
Well, with Jeff, it's a bizarre thing. I think
Watch out, he's here. No.
Yeah, I know with Jeff, I coughed up $300 to pass on to the automotive engineer, but then he's probably paid $600 to get the i3 shipped in from Melbourne. So, you know, it's all a bit rubbery, but he hasn't hit me for any money at this stage.
All right.
Do you say your i3 is in Melbourne?
No, he's got 2 i3s now.
No, I've got 2 i3s, and I pulled off the BMW logo from one of them. It only cost me $2,000 for that logo. But yeah, there's a wrecked i3 from Melbourne that we've got into the picture, and it's currently.
I haven't heard about that one.
Yeah, oh yeah, I think I have mentioned it, but well, to be fair, I talk a lot, and maybe people miss it.
So what's your plan?
alive.
Is it to combine 2 vehicles with one?
Oh, wait. It's not live.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's a lot of bits from this other vehicle, because the lovely thing is, my vehicle was hit on the driver's side front. This vehicle was hit on the driver's side left.
Oh.
Oh,
there's
right.
lots of bits
Okay.
that can be converted.
The
thing is,
driver's side left. Sorry.
No, the front passenger side. Okay, what my vehicle was hit.
Passenger side
My vehicle was on the front driver's side. The other vehicle was hit on the front passenger side. So sorry about that. But the point is, you can move the bits between the 2 cars, and that should be quite practical. If we can actually get the automotive engineer to make a report and me to take that to the Roads and Maritime Service and see if I can challenge them. And then I've told this story before, but if the RMS drags the heels, then I'll talk to a barrister I know, and that could be fun. Anyway, one thing at a time.
Hello, Alex.
How did you find the other i3?
Well, actually, Jeff O'Toole did that. Jeff O'Toole is like a magician with some things, you know. He seems to know what's going on, like in Europe or whatever. But anyway, yeah, Jeff found it and said, "Oh, you could do with this i3, John. I reckon you could do with that." And I'm going, "Oh yeah, okay, I guess so."
So, Alex, gentlemen, have just joined. We're still a little bit of chit chat while we're letting other people join.
Thanks.
So we'll probably give it another few minutes.
There's 3 people on the live stream.
Ah,
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I wonder, Jason, maybe you want to periodically check the live stream if someone's putting some comments to that are worth repeating. So.
and just checking, Alex, you're okay for us to stream it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sweet. So, just when I was planning when we do get this thing moving, my plan was to go directly to Alex. I'll let you go through your presentation, talk about the structural changes and some other business, the Bundanon trip, John, and other projects. But we'll just hang out for a few more minutes and maybe start off at in 2 minutes' time, 5 past the hour.
Maybe mention to the 5 people that are live streaming that there's a link to click.
There is a link to click.
Yeah, so where they've actually clicked the live stream, above that there's a link to the actual live meeting where they can participate.
Aha, there you go.
Can
you
I
think you've
make
done it.
comments on this other site you're talking about?
They can they can comment, but you can't see them. So.
Yeah. Well, they may prefer to loiter and not be seen, you know.
I'm just going to post a comment.
So just in the interim, I asked Alex to join us because we've crossed paths a couple of times on some other Zoom meetings, mostly councils at the moment, interestingly, where I and Mark get to talk about the EV from the user perspective, from the owner perspective, and Alex being part of the EV Council and heavily involved in policy and communication gets to talk about the industry perspective. And that's something that we hear a little bit about, but I don't think we hear as much as we could. And I found it really, really interesting. So I asked Alex if she could run through her presentation, which is EV from the Australian perspective. And then if we've got any questions, we can go from there. But we'll just give it one more minute, and then I think we'll forge on.
Yeah, there's lots of non-members joining the live stream.
Okay, good.
There's 7.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Then to everyone that's listening, we've got another minute to go. No, actually, I think it's time that we started. Hello, I'm Michael Day, National Treasurer and Chair of New South Wales. This was just a chance for us to catch up Zoom-wise, but also, as I was saying a little bit earlier, introduce Alex from the Electric Vehicle Council, who will give us one of the presentations that I've seen before, Mark's seen before, that we've done jointly in some of the council sessions. So I'll let Alex go in a second then, but afterwards I was hoping that people could hang on a little bit so that we can talk about a few other things, structural changes and some of the other business. But I might just hand over directly to Alex.
Cool. Can you see that at the moment? My share is working?
Yes.
Yes.
We can.
Cool. Hi everyone. Yes, so I'm Alex. I work at the Electric Vehicle Council. We're the peak national body representing the EV industry in Australia. So we're made up of industry members from the automotive, charging infrastructure, energy, electricity and startup sectors. And everyone that's a member informs our policy development and advocacy work with governments at the state, local and the federal level. It's exciting to present today because we released an report only yesterday. So all of the data in here is new and inclusive of 2019 and up to mid-2020. So hopefully there'll be some in there. There's just a bit of background noise.
Yeah, I just muted Greg.
So what we're looking at here is a significant increase in electric vehicle sales in 2019, so up 200%. And even more interesting is that EV sales haven't really been that affected by COVID-19. So we're still seeing that EV uptake is increasing despite that sales of petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles is going down. The segment is still small in terms of new vehicle sales, but it's positive that people are still buying EVs despite that overall negative downturn. We're going to have 28 models on the market at the moment. As you can see, 12 are BEV and 16 are FEV. 8 of these are under 65k. That's the same number of models that were available last year, but we will see 6 new EVs by the end of 2021, and hopefully we'll have 2 of those under 50k. I'm sure a lot of you know the number of models we get in Australia is restricted. We do not have the model availability that is seen in other markets, and that really is due to our lack of fuel efficiency standards and the national electric vehicle strategy that we've been promised time and time again. What the national EV strategy and the fuel efficiency standard does is demonstrate to global officers who allocate electric vehicle numbers to different markets that Australia is prepared for the technology and the government supportive of it. And given that we don't have those 2 fundamental things at the moment, we are receiving very limited numbers of models that we do get and very limited number of models that are available in other markets.
So question on that, Alex, I mean, do you think that's the big thing, or we're a small market, is that part of it, or we're a right-hand market, that's part of it, we're early in the cycle, it's part of it, or is it really the big meaty thing is the government support and just the general perception that we're falling behind?
So we've done surveys with our OEM members, and the big meaty thing is our lack of policy. We are actually a big market that, we have nearly 2 vehicles per person in Australia. We have a very high uptake of vehicles despite that we're a small market. If we had more demonstrated policy support, then we have been told we would be allocated more vehicles. So that research is underpinned by conversations with OEMs who have conversations with global office. And what really happens is the Australian office has to make the business case for bringing those cars to market here. And if in Europe, for example, you're going to get fined for not meeting fleet emissions averages across your fleet sales targets, then you really are. Yeah, it's a compelling argument to send those cars to Europe as opposed to Australia, where really we accept anything and everything, and there'll be no financial penalty for bringing anything with, poor emission standards.
Right, thank you.
Michael, Alex, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay. You were saying that the sales of electric vehicles was continuing to be strong in spite of the fact that the sales of other electric vehicles were declining. Now, maybe that just is and there's no explanation, but do you have any thoughts on why that might be the case?
So we tend to think that the people who are buying electric vehicles have been considering it for some time and have been saving for that purchase. Additionally, that they've probably purchased the vehicle before, and additionally that it's been a decision and it's an investment decision. It's not just something that they're kind of thinking about for 1 or 2 months. They've had some time to think about it. They put the money aside and they really are investing in the technology because they see it as a future asset, essentially, is what we have the opinion of, but we don't have research on that. That's just basically what we've seen. In the report, there is quite a lot of detail on consumer sentiment, and we did ask the question actually through the NRMA, RAA, and the can't remember the name of the Victorian one, but the Victorian agency, and we asked, would COVID-19 affect buying electric vehicle? And it was actually a positive response. They said people would now consider buying electric vehicles more, one, because they can see the lack of pollution in the air from when we were in isolation. So people have noticed the clearer skies, and that's public health benefits and also the environmental benefits. So it has kind of turned people's heads in saying, okay, well, we actually see in the air the difference that electric vehicles can have just by having less cars on the road in that 6-week period that we saw in Sydney.
Okay, well, that's very interesting.
It is super interesting because what you described before is kind of where I'm at. I mean, I didn't think that. I think I was a little bit of an extreme case having been involved in the scene, but I'm looking at the car I've saved up for a new car, to a 8-year-old car, thinking about buying a new car, determine that it's going to be electric. I've just sort of saved my pennies a little bit and built up the business case with the missus that I should do this. So that's pretty much where I'm at.
Yeah, and I think people are also starting to understand a little bit more the benefits of buying vehicles on a total cost of ownership basis. So rather than considering the sticker price of a vehicle, they now are starting to understand the savings that you might make on savings on for maintenance and savings in fuel and that kind of thing. So there is definitely more consumer appetite because there's more education and understanding, but I think that comes additionally down to more care about the environmental and public health benefits of it. So it's kind of all those factors that work together to drive the incentive for people to even consider electrification. And then once they've made that decision, it's the planning to purchase the vehicle, which, because, is an expensive asset now, it's not a quick decision and it's going to take some planning. And I think that's really driving the sales continuing into this year. So yeah, on this screen, you can see that there'll be more models available later in the year. And this might increase as in the next year. It just depends on what support and allocation we see. Production of electric vehicles hasn't really slowed in the manufacturing countries either, despite, there would have been closures of facilities because electric vehicles were still prioritized in manufacturing assembly units.
Alex, it's Chris here. There was an error on that last slide. I don't know whether it's been pointed out to you. The price of the Mini is $59,990.
So the pricing we get here is actually from BMW. So I'll have to run that back through them. They submit the price and costings to us, but thanks for bringing that up. That looks like it might be the Countryman price.
That's correct.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'll make a note of it, and we might have to change that in the report because
I picked it up yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Maybe that's cost price.
That would be lucky. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you for that. I'll go back to them and suggest we edit it. So, you know, I'm sure we're all aware that what is 50% of the electric vehicles on the new electric vehicles anyways, the cost of lithium. So the battery price is approximately 50% of the upfront price of an electric vehicle. And we're seeing the cost of lithium go down significantly to the point where price parity is predicted in some vehicle segments by about 2024. When we say that, we're considering price parity in supportive policy markets, so it's unlikely Australia is going to start to see price parity until a bit later, and that really is driven by the fact that making the business case is so difficult, and therefore it's unlikely that we'll see cheaper priced vehicles when other markets do. Obviously, carbon dioxide emissions intensity is not doing well in Australia. We have decreased 0.2% in the last year, but that really is just driven by more fuel efficient vehicles in the petrol sector. Any advances that the electric vehicles are contributing to carbon dioxide emissions intensity is actually not represented in these figures because it's undercut by diesel and petrol vehicle emissions. Interestingly, the biggest segment of EV uptake is private consumers and it's not fleets. And that's why it's a core policy point of the electric vehicle council is to encourage the uptake of EVs in fleets, because once we see the demand in fleets, we'll see a trickle down to the second-hand market of electric vehicles, but we'll also see a more demonstrated need for vehicles in Australia, and particularly in corporate and government fleets that are driving the transition elsewhere. So we're looking at charging infrastructure. I'm sure you're all aware with your electric vehicles, sometimes it can be hard to find a charger. Over the last 2 days, I actually had the Mini Countryman on hire from BMW, and trying to find a Type 2 charger that had a cord, sorry, was quite the effort, but in the end, I just ended up plugging in from my PowerPoint. But we are still seeing a significant increase in electric vehicle chargers. And what's positive is that we're seeing significant investment in fast charging. So that is really where we drive funding commitments from governments, is to really build those support networks for highways and interstate activity. Additionally, we're talking to a lot of local governments about what they can do to support EV uptake in terms of charging infrastructure, and they're starting to look at how they can facilitate charging at government facilities as well, so swimming pools, libraries, and those kinds of things. Obviously, don't need to convince you why electrify. You know, the public health benefits here, we did a report last year called Cleaner and Safer Roads, and these were some of the findings from that report. So we would really save a lot of money in terms of public health, what we're spending on public health. And additionally, the lives that are lost from carbon emissions, from vehicle emissions, is something that's not considered in the national road toll. And so another policy position of the Electric Vehicle Council is that we should start considering, you know, how many people are dying from road transport and vehicle emissions related deaths. We recently went to the Senate Select Committee to make that point and had some pretty interesting questions from senators there. On the left-hand side, you can see most recent results from our consumer sentiment survey that I mentioned earlier. So we just asked a few of these questions to the respondents, and you can see that it really is geared quite positively towards electrification, and people are starting to understand more about the technology and the benefits that it can bring. There's a full breakdown of that in the report as well. So some developments we've seen in the last 18 months has really been towards the built environment, understanding that access to public charging infrastructure is necessary to alleviate range anxiety and other issues associated when people don't have off-street parking. So we've already got commitments from the New South Wales and ACT governments who are starting to look at how they can provide EV ready in their building codes. Additionally, there are a few local governments that have started to include these in their development control plans, so that new builds, developments, commercial and residential, have the capacity to be electric vehicle ready. There are different levels of electric vehicle ready. So some is just, you know, building the cabling to the building. Some of it's building the cabling to specific car points with an outlet. And then the third phase is actually installing the hardware so that each car park has the charging infrastructure. And that is starting to occur in some new developments, and definitely the development industry is taking note of what the future of transport would be, given that, you know, they're considering they're building a building for 40 years likely before they upgrade, and we're going to see significant changes in the way that we're transporting ourselves around cities. Adopting right to charge policies is recommended. It's something that exists in California, and that basically is that a tenant would have the right to charge or install charging infrastructure facilities regardless of strata or corporate bodies saying otherwise. We haven't made any advances on that, but that is a point that we're really driving home at the moment.
And that's big. We get that a lot. Is that I live in Greg, live in a flat and have so much trouble trying to get charge infrastructure put in. Can we help? How do we turn that around?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a really hard thing. Sorry?
I was going to say, I tell you what, I've had a lot of issues from my strata recently. I got permission to put in a charging point in my allocated car park, and just little things, because it's so foreign to them, they just didn't understand. The charging port of my car is on the rear left-hand side. So the cable has to go from the front of my vehicle or my car parking spot to the rear of my vehicle and plug in the side. Now, even though I had cable covers over this, they're still complaining that it's a trip hazard and they want it disconnected and reconnected whenever I'm charging or not charging. They're also sort of talking about, the strata rules about how nothing apart from a vehicle is allowed to be placed in that car parking spot. So, they've got a long way to catch up with the needs of electric vehicle owners. Yeah,
and so we have been engaging in a few ways with the strata body representatives, and they are kind of coming to light on some of these issues. But yeah, it's one of those things that will take a lot of effort to try and drive the change individually, which is why we're really pushing for this right to charge policy. And we haven't necessarily had positive or negative feedback on that. I think it might end up being something that is considered maybe this year or next year by a few governments, but it's definitely something that we're driving home to ensure, it's about providing equitable access to technology, and that's something that governments mandate as part of their protocol, essentially. So they are considering what they can do, but at the moment I can't make any promises on that, unfortunately. We're still pushing, we're trying to, but it's just not quite there yet. The other thing that we highlighted this year in the report was the industry development opportunities. So we're really trying to push this idea that Australia has the capacity to do the whole battery value chain. And additionally, there is even the potential for EV manufacturing here. I mean, there has been signals from GFG Alliance, Sanjeev Gupta, who's a billionaire in the automotive sector, who has basically said, I'll make electric vehicles in South Australia. And there are a few other small startup companies that are considering building electric vehicles here. But the really big opportunity is the battery manufacturing and the lithium circular economy. So we're already mining 9 out of the 10 critical minerals that are required for battery manufacturing, and basically we ship those mined minerals in their core form to battery manufacturing countries. What we're advocating for is specific policy to invest or encourage investment in battery manufacturing as an industry, and that includes the processing of those minerals and additionally the facilities needed to actually manufacture the batteries. What we'll then hopefully see, if we start to see some of that investment, and we have seen signals, there are a few companies that have listed or are looking to build plants in Australia, that they'll also start to invest in recycling opportunities here as well, because as you're probably aware, a lot of the components from an EV battery can be recycled and then reused to put into a new battery. So whether that is breaking down the cells and then putting it into the powders, the cathode anode powders, and then putting that back into a battery.
And that was going to be my question. Have you seen anyone looking at that seriously? Because, I mean, I've had 2-3 different battery packs and lots of different batteries that I've got to offload, and it just feels wrong to throw them away.
So there are companies in Australia, and there is something called the Battery Stewardship Council who is working to...
I think a lot of it is repurposing, but I think that's actually a lot more popular than recycling.
Well, yeah, I had broken ones. I had broken ones, and so I'm just figuring that I'm not the only one that's got broken ones, and it's stupid and blowing them up. But
yeah, well, if the cell is dead, then you don't repurpose it. But most of the time, that's not the case.
Well, actually, the thing with repurposing is unless that you can test it and there are protocols to follow, then the car manufacturers don't actually encourage secondary application unless they've been through the testing processes or unless there is a stringent, process to follow.
I think a lot of people are doing it by themselves. If you see a lot of electric vehicles are involved in accidents and written off, and straight away the battery pack gets snapped up. It doesn't.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. I think, at the moment we're still at a very low capacity, but obviously in the future it's going to be something that has to be managed with probably more established processes. Lithium Australia is a company that's actually invested in a lithium battery recycler in Victoria called EnviroStream, and they've, I can't remember what the percentage is, but they actually own quite a lot of that recycling company now. So they're really driving the lithium circular economy. EnviroStream, CMA eHocycle are also companies that have invested in lithium processing plants specifically because they see electric vehicle and energy storage batteries on the horizon. But because we don't have a market share at the moment, it's hard for people to make the business case for developing those recycling facilities. So it's that chicken and egg problem, of saying, well, we won't have the batteries for 10 years a lot of the time. New batteries are expected to last 10 years. So why would we start building something that could take us 5 now? So it's just really bridging that gap.
Alex, another question about making batteries locally. You wonder what the transport cost is as compared to the manufacturing cost, because I guess the argument is that if you're going to be environmental, then it makes sense to move the raw materials around less of the globe to sort of make stuff with. So, that's one thing I'm curious about. But, as far as repurposing batteries, I suppose I have the whole axe that I grind about right to repair and dignity of risk and so on. But admittedly, you may be going off in a different direction. But those are 2 things that your talk prompts me to think about.
Yeah, listen, the EVC doesn't have a position on whether the battery should be repurposed or recycled. We absolutely don't. But what we do advocate for is the safe processes, so that when you do have a significant number of batteries, you have qualified people that are working on that. And I mean, I know that at the AEVA, you guys are really in tune with the technology and you often do a lot of your own conversions. But when you're talking to the everyday public, it's just, really building the capacity for them to easily deal with their batteries, and that might be repurposing if car manufacturers decide to go down that path in Australia. But if they don't, then we will need to establish recycling processes so that people and consumers who do end up with an old electric vehicle battery know what they can do with it and know that it's not going to go to landfill.
Well, I think I'll echo what Mark is saying, is that the secondary market, in a sense, is very lively and energetic. And if there is a battery that someone can put to good use, people don't need encouragement. They're running around looking for these things. The secondary market is self-energizing, I guess you might say.
But you've got to hope we'll get to a point where there's so many more electric vehicles out there that the secondary market, the stuff that we do, is swamped by batteries. I mean, that's the aim, you would think. So to Alex's point, that at that stage, we're going to have to deal with these things. So
yeah, and I mean, absolutely, the moment they are definitely an asset and they're definitely something valuable. And I think that, the secondary market is driven by people that are really enthusiastic about what the technology can do and how they can use the technology, but that's not your everyday person. And so I think it's really making sure that the average consumer has a way to deal with something in an environmentally friendly way. And, in Europe, there is a lot of repurposing being done by the car manufacturers. From damaged batteries, there's not that many end-of-life batteries, but shipping companies are going to transport lithium-ion batteries if they're damaged. And at the moment, they're increasingly suggesting that even at end of life, they're not going to do that, which means we have to have an established onshore industry to deal with those batteries. Otherwise, we're going to end up with batteries in landfill or batteries in storage facilities. I mean, a damaged battery thermal runaway, there's potential for reignition if the wrong person deals with that. If the car's in an accident, and then a tow trucker doesn't know anything about electric vehicle batteries, takes it to a scrapyard, and then someone crushes it in a scrapyard, who knows what could happen. So it's just making sure that the bases are covered for people that don't necessarily have an interest in batteries, I suppose, and unfortunately not everyone does have an interest in batteries. So, it's increasingly common for people to just throw their mobile phones in the bin. We only recycle 95% of lithium-ion batteries in Australia. We don't recycle 95% of lithium-ion batteries in Australia. It's 5% that we are recycling. So as we get more and more electric vehicle batteries, we really do need to consider the capacity that we have onshore for continuing to recycle.
I guess people are inherently lazy, so unless there's a specific bin for it or it goes in the yellow bin out the front of your house, they tend not to make effort.
Exactly, and so it's just what like buyback schemes can we build, and what processes can be established so that it does become something as simple as you call a company, they pick up the battery, and then you never have to think about it again. But it's a certified recycler or company, and that it's going to the right place.
Yeah, I guess.
Is there a role for the manufacturers in that, Alex?
Pardon me?
I was just curious, John here. Is there a role for the car manufacturers in the recycling process and stewardship over the battery at the end of life?
So that is actually a trend. In China, for example, the manufacturers are responsible for the recycling of the batteries. So there is a system in place where the OEMs have to be able to demonstrate that a battery has been recycled. And there's something called the Global Battery Alliance, which has been signed by a few car manufacturers that's really looking to drive something called a battery passport. So that would be similar to the Chinese system, where there's a barcode on the battery and what's happened to the battery and where it is at its stage of life. If it's been processed, where it's sitting and that kind of thing. Similar to, when you buy something online and then you've got a tracking schedule, where it is and where it's going. People are looking at how that will happen. In Australia, obviously, we're quite far behind, but it is actually a piece of work that the Electric Vehicle Council is looking at now. Is not necessarily the answers, but identifying the problems and looking to international experiences and seeing if we can start to build here, should we need to.
Is it time to introduce the concept of, a small fee that goes on top of the cost of a battery? And then sort of, you get it, like getting 10 cents back for your can or your bottle or whatever. So there is that bit more of an encouragement. Maybe not so much with car batteries, but, other kind of regular batteries would be an easier kind of sell.
Yeah, and that's actually what's being considered at the moment. So something called the Battery Stewardship Council is the industry representative they're a not-for-profit looking to accelerate battery recycling in Australia. They are working based off COAG, orders, essentially, suggesting that we need to improve lithium-ion battery recycling. And one of the things they've proposed in their design scheme is a levy. And exactly that. So you put, 4 cents, I think is the number. You can find all this on their website. They've got all their publications and stuff there. But yeah, they're proposing a 4 cent levy on batteries, depending on their weight. This is unlikely to be applicable to electric vehicle batteries. The Electric Vehicle Council is part of the Battery Stewardship Council. We support that we need to establish recycling processes and, really encourage recycling in electric vehicle batteries, but additionally that we don't want to disincentivize people to buy them to start with. So we've found that, using that levy, it might be an extra $500 or something on an electric vehicle battery. So we're included in the design scheme, but there is definitely going to be further consultation with the industry and additionally looking at if there's a market failure that needs to be addressed, because they really do want to drive an industry-led scheme. And if that means the electric vehicle industry has put forward processes that demonstrate there is viability of what they're already doing, then they won't necessarily be included in that levy.
It sounds like also there's an opportunity for, companies to actually start looking at doing second life batteries. I mean, I know quite a few people in this interest group would, jump at the chance for a reasonable price, slightly used lithium-ion battery suitable for cars. But, there's also scope outside of that, such as, the Powerwall style, energy storage and things like that.
Yeah, and I think, so there's a company called Electrify in Victoria that is working on secondary applications of electric vehicle batteries. Again, we're not really at market capacity to drive that much investment in Australia. We have about 18,000 electric vehicles on the road, and the amount of batteries from that would likely be at their end of life is quite limited. And so I think we'll start to see more uptake and investment in that maybe in the coming years. But I think we're still just a bit too much in our infancy to see much development in that stage right now. So what I've got on this slide here is a policy summary. So we send out, as part of our report, a policy survey to governments, asking them whether they have these policies in place to support electric vehicle uptake. They range from things like an EV sales target through to public transport plans, through to industry development opportunities and public awareness. So using this system, using a system that we developed, we've graded all of the states on their policy, and as you can see, it's not that great at the lower end, but the ACT is doing pretty well. New South Wales has actually made some pretty good leaps from last year, and they've actually invested quite a lot of money in the last year. So it's $100 million into electric vehicle programs, and then additionally suggested an electric bus commitment. So they've already done their EOIs and things for transitioning their Sydney bus fleet. And as part of their net zero plan this year, they have included an electric vehicle charging infrastructure and model availability program. So part of that program is investing in public fast charging networks. And then another part of that program is a reverse option to help fleets transition their fleets to electric vehicles. And, you know, that it's a really important thing that they're focusing on fleets, despite that we're just the average consumer, because if fleets start showing demand for electric vehicles, then we really might see more models come to market, or we might at least be able to make the business case from local offices to head office that there is the demand to bring more vehicles here. So that's really why we're driving that fleet story. 94 councils have declared a climate emergency. As Michael said, we've kind of been on a lot of council webinars together lately, and that's because councils are starting to look to their communities and show them what they can do as individuals to promote carbon emissions reductions. Additionally, people are starting to look at how fleets can be transitioned to electric vehicles, or how charging infrastructure can be incentivized and provided for communities and that kind of thing. So it's positive to see, and we are seeing more councils declare climate emergencies. The EBC is certainly hearing from councils a lot more about what they can do as community campaigners to help their municipalities with electric vehicle uptake.
You think that's because the councils are most active because they're closer to their constituents? That's the sort of a groundswell. It just seems that, you know, we talk a lot to the councils, but there doesn't seem to be as much happening at the higher levels. You probably see a little bit more than us, but it just seems a very big disconnect about that council level and anything up the chain.
I think what happens at councils is if there's a supportive mayor or a climate declaration, then what drives council policy is
solutions.
Yeah, is the solution. So there's probably a few less hurdles than state and federal governments, but you know, you've got public servants working in state governments who kind of have to go through a few people, and you know, it goes to a minister, and then if the minister's on side or not on side, it kind of has a lot of things to go through. Whereas if the mayor in a council says, I want electric vehicles in the fleet, then council has to work out how to put them in the fleet.
Right.
And so it's just having that executive buy-in that really is helping councils make those changes. They are making the changes in different ways. I've found through my experience that councils will either look at fleet transition, and they'll be particularly active in, you know, transitioning their fleet to electric vehicles, be that garbage trucks or be that their actual vehicles that the councils use themselves. In other areas, they're really focusing on electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So how can they help encourage uptake of EVs through provisioning of infrastructure for their for their community members and that kind of thing. So it is driven by community members saying, why aren't you providing charges? And that is really at a local government level. It's a grassroots campaign essentially, compared to, you know, what's a bigger picture, and probably with more hurdles than we're seeing at local government level. So that's it from me. There's you know, some resources that I've just always include at the end there for New South Wales presentations, obviously the AEVA. You guys know about that one, but Electric Vehicle Council, we put all our submissions and our media releases up on there. We additionally have reports and anything that we've got going. Otherwise, we're pretty active on Twitter and that kind of thing. NRMA is actually really supportive agency for electric vehicles. They really want to drive uptake. They see it as the future. And so they are constantly updating their website with more information. And recently we're starting to see not only Car Advice, but in Car Expert and a lot of other publications, a lot more about electric vehicles and stories. So it's encouraging to see that that's becoming more mainstream. I would have told you a year ago even that there was barely anything about them. So it's just, you know, that normalization of the technology and recognition that it is actually the future of where cars are going. And yeah.
And a final plug that for your report that was literally released last week, wasn't it?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. It was.
Yesterday. Yeah.
I've downloaded it already, although I haven't read it all, I must admit.
Yeah, it's quite long this year, I think. Yeah. But yes, we got it out yesterday. So it was good. We got really good reception for it. Got a few news articles in the Herald and the AFR and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's good.
Thank you very much, Alex. Any other questions? Any final questions?
Yeah. Reading them off the chat, are there any noises about the Chinese EVs being brought in other than the EMG that are much cheaper and being made in tens of thousands?
No, there aren't that many whispers about more cars coming to market here at the moment. MG is the only one that we've heard of. BYD is pretty active in the heavy vehicle space. So they are looking to bring electric buses. They've already got contracts with a few people. There's some information about that again in the report. So it's hard to put it all in a presentation. But additionally, in the truck space, BYD is starting to make some headway there. But at the moment, there's no other signals that we're going to get much more from Chinese models.
Okay, and then another question was, is there an education problem with scrapyards and towing industry, and could the Electric Vehicle Council get involved in that?
The Electric Vehicle Council is involved in that. So there's not a lack of education, there's just a lack of need at the moment. So what we are lucky enough to have in Australia is that the market is small enough that we can kind of look at the problems and fix them before we get to them. So it's been identified that the after-sales sector obviously needs upskilling and training, and PwC Skills for Australia is probably the likely organisation that will look at that. They're already the ones that are developing some courses for electric vehicles and RTOs to offer that kind of training. So it's not that no one's thinking about it, it's just that we haven't had the demand in the previous 3 years to mean that we have that training available now.
Okay, and the last one is, will we see you at the Australian Electric Vehicle Association's next expo doing this exact same presentation?
Well, if you ask, maybe I'll be there.
All right.
Well, that's a good point, because there is the conference. We're going to have our conference in September, so note to self, I'll follow up.
And you've had 20 people watch you on the live stream plus this group, so.
Cool. Well, thanks, guys. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much, Alex.
Well, there's one more question I can ask, I hope.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things we have discussed at our AEVA meetings is that it would be lovely to have a low-priced entry-level electric vehicle. Now, at some level, second-hand electric vehicles would cover that. Now, I have to admit, we're aspirational in the sense that we're all wealthy enough to buy new electric vehicles, but we can see the point in having low-cost entry-level vehicles for people who are not as passionate as we are. And I suppose for myself and others, we see it, obviously maybe it's a two-faced thing, but we see a certain level of frustration that, you know, yes, we're into this and we can afford it, but we'd love to have more cheaper entry-level vehicles out there. Now, maybe you do or don't have a view on that, but, you know, that's an observation from where I sit anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would love more entry-level vehicles available in the Australian market, but we don't necessarily advocate for secondary imports purely because we actually want to encourage OEMs to bring new models here. And that's our policy priority. So we don't advocate for or against, we're just pretty silent on the topic, and that's because our policy priority sits elsewhere. Okay. If we're going to ask, basically, if we're going to ask government to do something, and those are the two options, we're going to ask them to bring more models to market, and we know that those will eventually trickle down into the second-hand market. it obviously isn't equitable because it is providing vehicles to people that can afford it over others that can't, but it's a step change. The transition to electrification isn't going to happen overnight, and you kind of have to take those steps as they come. And we're following a lot of the policy development that's happened in other markets, and that's good for us because it means we have the best practice approach to bringing electric vehicles here, and that's what we're really advocating for.
Okay, well that's good.
Sorry, can I maybe just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the presentation, so maybe that was covered, but I'm interested in charging infrastructure. To what extent government is supporting and how you see the coordination between the Electric Vehicle Council, AEVA, and Infrastructure Australia. Like, is there a lot of coordination happening, or is it like who's pushing the charging infrastructure case to government?
It's definitely a key priority for us. We know that charging infrastructure is probably, apart from price of an EV, the main barrier to adoption for consumers in Australia. So it's probably our second policy position is we need more investment. The federal government hasn't released their national electric vehicle strategy, so we're not sure yet what is going to be included in that in terms of investment for EV infrastructure. Infrastructure Australia, is priority for them that we build a national charging network. So it's determining whether the federal government is going to consider that. At a state level, there is definitely more investment. So as I mentioned earlier, New South Wales is looking to commit quite a lot of money. Victoria is committing quite a lot of money, and a lot of the other state governments are releasing electric vehicle strategies later this year. So it's likely within those you'll see more commitments to it. But you're also seeing quite a lot of co-funding models. So private investment combined with local government investment, or private investment with state governments, or even things like the NRMA who have invested in charging infrastructure.
So if AEVA was approaching private businesses to see if they were interested in putting up chargers, if we then wanted to tap into some form of government funding, what would be the easiest avenue for that?
It would be quite difficult because there isn't any government funding. The government would be funding those based on the maps that they develop, unless they have co-funding programs out there that exist to help private businesses. But as far as I'm aware, those programs are.
So there's nothing in ARENA or anywhere.
The ARENA has invested. So the federal government, the only investment they've made to charging infrastructure is via ARENA. So they have installed chargers in Australia already. But in terms of like local businesses, it's unlikely that you'll see grant money going to them at the moment, and that's just because priority tends to be fast chargers, and fast chargers tends to be on highways, so it's just not really where we're looking.
Okay, thank you.
Online question: is there a group of people trying to attract the Aussie backyard car fix-it culture into the EV space over the old V8s and the Geminis? And I said that's Australian Electric Vehicle Association.
Yeah.
The next question is, will there be more trials on the V2G study that the ANU and ACT government is doing? Is this a priority for AEVA to push forward, or is this not the highest priority at the moment?
I'd say that's we're interested, but it's not the highest priority at the moment. It's more get bums and seats, get people excited by cars. Vehicle to grid, nice, but it's probably not the highest priority.
Yeah, I mean, the Electric Vehicle Council is interested in it because obviously it's another benefit of electric vehicles. So it stabilizes the grid and it provides a secondary asset for what your car is doing. It really can be used to balance the load of electricity on the electricity grid. It's the world first vehicle to grid trial. It's the largest one. So let's celebrate that. I don't think we're probably going to see one more in the next few months or anything, but there are definitely more trials that are coming up. There's a few smart charging trials that with Origin Energy recently announced with ARENA, a smart charging trial. So if you sign up to that and you are selected, they're giving away 150 EV Link smart chargers, and then they'll use that to trial smart charging.
I say on a personal note that I applied for that and I got a phone call and they said that I had to keep my car available for a whole year before they would start the trial.
I didn't know that, but
I said, well, I think I'm going to buy a Model 3 by the time that comes out. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard, isn't it? Because most people who've got an electric vehicle now probably aren't going to buy a new one soon. But if you have been passionate about them for a while, you're probably not on your first, and you're certainly not on your last. So,
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, yeah.
That's good.
I've got a question.
Lubo.
Hey, were there any submissions to the government to actually, for EPA to do their work and actually start regulating the emissions and noise pollution? Because I haven't seen such a thing. And if I'm watching, different markets, we are probably 40 years behind comparing to other countries, seriously. So that will be actually start, pushing other people to go off the ridiculous vehicles they're driving in this country to actually put at least something more economical, more sort of less pollution, less noise. And I don't think that we are really up to 2020 in Australia with this. Like, I'm not saying that everyone needs to have electric vehicles, but if I look around what people are driving, I'm always thinking like we are in 1980.
yes, we have one of the oldest vehicle fleets in the world. It's true. People, a lot of people are driving cars over 10 years old, and we are 40 years behind the rest of the world. A lot of people have had fuel efficiency standards since the 80s. The government, who was it? It was a government, I can't remember which one, in the last 10 years that looked to develop fuel efficiency standards, but there was political playing, and that was something that just never got adopted. The reason we didn't have fuel efficiency standards initially was to protect the domestic manufacturing industry. That ended in 2017, so there really is no reason at the moment to not have fuel efficiency standards, but the government's take is that the vehicles are already becoming more efficient because that's what car manufacturers are doing, so why should we drive market to bring more expensive models here? I don't know if you, like in the election last year, that was one of the points that the coalition raised a few times, was if we're bringing fuel efficiency standards, then we're going to make you buy more expensive electric vehicles. It's a luxury item and that kind of thing. So it is something that we push for. We talk about it all the time, and it's just something that unfortunately we haven't got yet. And we've had some highs and some lows with it, but it's still on the back burner.
I was more thinking about the emissions, like nitrogen oxides and so on and so on. Some of the cars are so toxic that they shouldn't be on the road like really 10 years ago. So this is what I'm talking about. It's not like the new cars. Like, okay, new cars are, if everyone bought just a new car, a more efficient car, it would be good. But I'm talking about the existing cars. How do we push them out? Like, are we gonna allow them to drive forever? Until they're still good and they can emit the 95 decibel of noise? Is that like an Australian standard? Or?
I think they'll just die out basically. At the moment, I don't think there's much going to govern that. It is, as I mentioned earlier, we have done research to find the public health savings and also the noise pollution savings from electrifying. And we do push for considering the health impacts of electric vehicles as well as the environmental impacts, because they are equitable, and we understand that some people who don't care about the environment might care about public health. So we really try to make sure our messaging isn't only environment, it's also about all of the benefits of electric vehicles. Particulate matter 2.5 is the biggest emitter from a car, and unfortunately that just will continue to be the case until we have a cleaner fleet.
Well, one last comment I'll make. I mentioned vehicle manufacturers, and I won't sort of dwell on particular names, but there did seem to be a tendency for manufacturers to up all the add-ons and accessories and bits and pieces on new cars, push them into the luxury category, and then try to flog them because they thought there was more chance of selling electric vehicles to luxury car buyers as compared to entry-level buyers. So, but having said that, I don't want you to speak in defence of anything in particular, but I just can't help myself but make that comment. But I'll shut up now. Yes, people telling you to shut up. Yeah.
Well, that was a comment from the lady at Nissan saying that people are interested in electric cars wanted something a little bit premium, which I thought was an interesting comment, but it's similar to what you're saying.
problem is the electric cars are premium to start with. They cost more. Right?
Well,
So
sad
if
is true, I guess.
if someone's going to fork out like 45,000 plus for a car, they want it to have some features. That's just the bottom line. It's just the way it is.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Alex. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the presentation.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you next time.
For the rest of us, if you a few more things on the agenda. First thing being from something that I wanted to bring up because, well, if I go through the agenda, the next two things were structural changes and then any other business and then projects. But I just wanted to talk quickly about the proposal that will soon go to the membership, which is the, where are we? We'll be sending out, the executive, of which I'm one of them, being the National Treasurer, will be sending out a note to all members about the plans to restructure the organisation, because at the moment we're registered as an association in Victoria, which actually doesn't give us the complete protections that we need as an organisation that's running nationally. So the plan is to convert to, we've had legal advice, this is the legal advice, or part of it, to convert to company limited by guarantee, which will be more appropriate for us as an organisation. Like I say, there'll be a letter coming out from the executive. It will, with a coverall explaining the situation, how we got to this point, and why we need to do this, and then a link to the, it's interesting, a link to the, I didn't know you could do that, to this letter, so you can go through the details, and then there'll be an opportunity to ask questions, because we'll have to take this to the membership and get approval from the membership to change the constitution to make this happen. In general, are there any questions about the change to the organisation, the proposed change to the organisation, in advance? Just an opportunity to talk about it, given that I've been heavily involved in it.
Personally, I think it's a very good move in order to protect the association. You know, as far as our big capital outlays and so on with expos, etc., we don't want to have a hit such as COVID-19, which you know, causes bankruptcy, etc., for the organisation. So if we can keep the expo and convention separate to our membership, I think that's probably a fairly prudent measure.
And that's part of it. I mean, that's really where the conversation started. We wanted to find out our GST status, which we do, you know, every so often, just to make sure that we're within the rules, and we are. The other was we wanted to have a greater separation between the expos and AEVA.org. Completely to your point, Greg, if there's things like accidents or pandemics, then there's some separation, and there'd be protection so that the org would keep going and the AEVA events could take the pain, so to speak. There was that. There's also the possibility, although yet to be explored, that we could become a charity, and therefore donations to AEVA could be tax deductible. Although that's another step.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome if we could set that up, because then ultimately that could fund a lot of our expo and public events activities as well, if we're able to get charitable status.
And it means it's a bit easier for us to get grants, things like that. So all of these things are driving us to a point where we need to be structured appropriately, and we're probably not right now, you know, incorporated in Victoria but operating nationally. But when the letter comes out, I encourage you to have a look, because we are going to have a vote beforehand, before the national AGM, to hopefully get this through and then go through the process of changing the structure.
Have we got a date yet for the national AGM?
We do, actually.
Sorry, I don't think I've been notified of that yet.
I checked the other day, because we're talking. There's two things that are coming up. There's the conference. There was going to be the big expo in Victoria, but of course that's not going to happen. So it's going to go online. So where are we? the where are we? I've got the date here somewhere. I'll find it and I'll send it out. I think
that
it's
would be
in
great.
September. I think it's late September, October. I think it's October when we'll have the conference and then the AGM thereon afterwards. It'll be an online conference. Some interesting speakers, international speakers. More on that soon.
Who have we got that's international out of interest?
I can't remember the names, but there was US, UK, Netherlands. The hope was to get, on top of that, Robert Llewellyn to speak as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but that was people. He was definitely on the list. And then some people, like I said, from overseas, which we would actually had planned to get them over beforehand. Hopefully that some of them would have come to the physical meeting. Turns out that because no one's travelling and everyone's kind of interested, there'll be even more people from overseas involved because they can, and it'll be an electronic event.
Have we got the ChargeNet fellows from New Zealand yet?
Oh, good question. Don't know. I'll have to ask Bryce. He's been pushing the program.
Okay.
Somebody else who might be of interest is Simon Hackett. He personally knows Robert Llewellyn.
Yeah.
And I think he's friends with his wife or something. And also he's on the board of Redflow, which do static storage.
Yep.
But that might be of interest.
All good. That's a good point.
He also likes EVs.
All good. But in general, is there any questions for me in advance of the information coming out formally on the structural changes, proposed structural changes?
No, I personally, I just think it's a very good idea. I've read through all the documents that you've sent out, and I think it's probably a fairly progressive move forward that allows us to grow and do various other activities without putting the original organisation at risk, and potentially attract donations as well. So, yeah, listen, I congratulate everyone on their work involved in this. So, thank you, Michael.
Yeah, bit of work in that.
Yeah, I don't underestimate how much work you put into it.
Well, good. Thanks. So there'll be more on that soon. Look out for the info soon. The next one is Bundanoon. So, John, you've got the info? If you're looking up the info.
I'm here.
John August?
Yeah, that's right. You're muted. Okay, I'm just phoning up Patrick Fitzgerald, who's someone at Bundanoon. So, okay, Patrick, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I'll start talking about this, and someone's trying to increase the call volume, but hopefully you'll hear what we're saying. We may have to relay things between you and us. But anyway, there have been some postings to Facebook that you may have seen, but in broad terms, Bundanoon is a town that banned bottled water. It's an interesting place to visit. I've not visited yet, so I thought it would be nice to sort of have an AEVA meeting do that. I've reached out to some people involved in that. They've been quite enthusiastic, and plans are progressing. Now, at this stage, I'm thinking we leave. This is for Saturday, the 5th of September, that we leave Parramatta about 9 a.m. planning to get to Bundanoon at 12:30. Now, that allows the cars that don't have much range to charge a bit along the way so we can travel as a group. But obviously, if our whole group ends up being long-range cars that don't need charging, we can change that. But the idea is to leave Parramatta about 9, get to Bundanoon at 12:30. Then we go to the club there, and apparently the club is close to the sports field there. And apparently the sports field does have a power board that they've used to, host festivals and things. So that means there should be at least enough 240-volt outlets to charge cars that need it. So we meet there at the club at 1:30. And we hang around at the club
no, sorry, we meet at the club at 12:30. What am I saying? We meet at the club at 12:30. We hang around for 1.5 hours to 2 p.m. Sort of, we sort of eat. We charge the cars that really need charging. Then at 2 o'clock, we drive to the town centre for those cars that don't need to keep charging, and we put our displays on our cars. And for probably about an hour, we have some sort of, you know, meet and greet formal events, show people our cars. And I'm also at some stage planning to interview Christine there for my radio show. And now let me see, we've got 12:30, 2 o'clock. Then about 3 or 3:30, we start to do our own thing, which might be going back to a pub, a cafe, or the club, continuing to talk and eat, or wander around town, and you know, and maybe drive around a little bit, and maybe leave the town at 6 p.m. But obviously, people can hang around and stay overnight if they want to. So, so that's the plan for the trip. And I know if you look at the COVID cases, they're getting down to like 5 new cases a day. And, you know, I think it's looking pretty promising for the 5th that things will be settled as far as travelling goes. So that's the current plan. And Patrick, can you confirm what I'm saying about meeting at the club, getting cars charged and that sort of thing? Does it all that make sense to you? Okay, so I suppose I know there's 2 people that have put up their hands a bit on Facebook, and you know, I've certainly put up my hands. Now I know, and anybody here want to sort of say that yes, they're interested or potentially interested?
I just wanted to point out that that is Father's Day weekend, so some people might have commitments for that weekend. Unfortunately, I know that I've got commitments on both Saturday and Sunday for Father's Day, so I'm not sure if anyone else has as well.
Okay, yeah, I suppose not being a father or a son of anybody alive, so I guess I didn't think of that one. But yeah, it seemed like a good date at the time.
But
so
yeah, that's fine.
John Cavaliris, you sounds like you're in still.
Love to come down for the run. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's say.
And I'm a father.
Also, I will mention, I've mentioned this to Richard McNeil, and he's actually put it on the Tesla Owner Club of Australia website. And as far as driving back into town, I guess I'm more thinking of having a range of cars, but I mean, there's 3 different models of Teslas who might want to be a part of that. So if we have, say, 5 people from AEVA and 2 or 3 people from the Tesla Owners Club of Australia, I think that'll be enough for it to be a thing. But, you know, if we have more than that, then you know, I think that'll be good. But it depends. We can have a bucket load of cars that don't need charging at Bundanoon. And obviously, for those cars that do need charging, you know, hopefully we won't max out. Or if we do max out, I guess some cars will have to stay a bit longer to get a charge. But at this stage, I think we're vaguely talking about 6 or 7 cars, which should be quite manageable. Am I right, Patrick?
Can't hear that very well.
Yeah, sorry, I can't hear it at all.
Who's banging?
There's a bit of background noise. So hang on, hang on a moment. I have.
So Jennifer.
Actually,
Anyway,
Patrick,
we got the point.
So Patrick, you're saying that not just the Oval, but there's other places that people would be able to charge. So could you repeat that? And I'll just pass that on.
Coming to you live.
He's talking to him.
Yeah.
Jennifer, more information on Facebook, but if you want something more specific, either contact John August. If you don't have John August's contacts, let me know and we'll put you in contact with him. I'm reading your chat post.
Okay, well, Patrick's telling me that we can perhaps do 10 cars at the club and even more at the Oval. So the options for charging seem to be increasing. So I think it will be very flexible and very open. But I think, Michael, I guess I was talking to Patrick, but you were saying that people can get in touch with me afterwards. So
Yep. So if that's okay, I am being presumptuous, but if that's okay, contact John. And if you don't have John's contact details, contact me or Mark Roberts, secretary or treasurer, and we'll pass you on, make that connection, and it's on Facebook.
Okay. Well, all right. Look, Patrick, thanks for that, and I'll keep in touch.
And John has posted the Facebook link in the chat, so you can go straight there.
All right, what's the next thing?
Well, unless there's any other business, I thought we'd just go straight through any other business.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, Patrick. We'll leave you to it.
Which I figured was two things. John wanted to talk. I could talk about projects, and then we could open the floor, or any order along those lines.
I think
did you see the link I just sent through about environmental community grants for environmental education?
Did see that. I'll grab that and I'll forward it on to Chris and to Chris. So yes, I don't know, but it makes sense. I'll follow through.
Yeah.
The next item on the agenda is the Canterbury Bankstown presentation. We just wanted to talk about that. Alexandra, Michael, and myself talked to a group of people. How many was it? About 20?
About 20. Canterbury, yeah.
From the Canterbury Bankstown Council, which is my local council as it happens, talking about their plans for EVs and giving them an education session on how they work and what they need.
Which is quite typical of the talks we've given recently. It's Alex and I, Mark, Alex and I have been double team EVs from the user perspective and EVs from the industry more industry perspective, so to speak. There's been a few of those recently, and getting good numbers.
Getting it from the glasses. Sorry, Michael. Okay, next item is members to nominate activities for next.
That's right.
Okay. Andreas has written to Bunnings and prepared a draft letter for McDonald's, canvassing installation of EV charging infrastructure. I thought we might want to talk about that. One thing that strikes me is we need to give him some sort of credibility. So we need to give him a title or something, like the infrastructure officer or something along those lines.
Yeah, so I was going to go back and just double check with National to make sure that we're not double timing on this, and then suggest something along those lines.
I think infrastructure liaison officer or something like that, which I held at one point. I think that would be an appropriate title as well.
Okay.
Give some credibility to his letters.
Yep, no worries. So, Andres, would you mind just sharing the letter with us, or so we can make sure that we're across it?
Sorry, yes, I'm happy to copy in anyone who wants to be copied in on any correspondence. So far I've copied in Mark and Greg mostly. But if you want to be in on any future correspondence, and I can send you what we're up to or what's been sent so far.
Great, because just as an addition, I'm the liaison with National, so I can check in with those folks as well, let them know what we're doing, and then we'll try and check out what they're doing in parallel.
Well, that was also what sort of my questioning for Alexandra was aimed at, like that we're not doubling up on some of their efforts, but
I think in a sense we are. I think in a sense we're not terribly coordinated. The three bodies you talked about, Infrastructure Australia, AEVA and EV Council, are all doing our own thing. And in fact, there's a possibility that us as AEVA New South Wales is doing something in parallel with the other branches. So yeah, probably all at the same time. But I'll check with National just to see.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. Yep.
What was next?
Several structural changes.
The structural changes.
Done and dusted. So unless there's questions, we can move that on.
Okay. No raffle, no break. Members' current projects. Did you want to use this opportunity now, Greg?
Listen, all I've got to add is that Jeff has ordered my charger, my controller, and BMS from WA.
What brands?
Listen, I would have to grab his email, to be honest.
That's right.
But I listen, everything is all coordinated with each other. So the BMS and charger and so on will work with a display screen. So I'll be able to see the temperature of each cell. I'll be able to see the voltage, etc., of each cell. And it's effectively, I believe, a plug and play setup. So that will simply go straight in. And I've spoken to Jeff about building the battery setup, because I've got, as many of you will know, 4 Tesla modules. So we've decided to put them where the rear seats were, because that's fairly centralized. And the rest of the components will either go under the driver's seat or up the front. I've also potentially got both weight and space room for another 8 modules if I was to choose to go down that track in the future as well. But with the current 4 modules, I'm likely to get about 180 kilometres.
Nice.
Can you tell us what vehicle it is, please?
I beg your pardon?
What's your car?
Can you tell us what vehicle?
It's a Enfield 8000. So it weighs about 550 kilos without batteries. And they made 108 of these electric vehicles in the UK and Greece in 1972 to 1975. So they've got a all aluminium body to them with a tubular steel frame.
And the guy you were talking about, Jeff, that's Jeff O'Toole from O'Toole's.
GC Tooling, yes.
GC Tooling, yeah. So just launching into another project from GT Tooling. So I got the Lotus back from Jeff about 2 weeks ago. So he did
look at that.
Quite a bit of mechanical work. Yeah, this is the battery pack. There's 2 parts of the battery pack. That's the top pack. And there's another part that goes underneath in what used to be the petrol tank.
I did.
So, which means I'm in the midst of building the battery pack and then doing the high voltage cabling so that I can spin the motor over again. Hopefully it'll be done. It'll be running, if not done. It'll be done by the end of the year, but hopefully I'll spin the motor over by the end of the month.
Is there any chance we could have a meet up at your place?
Yeah, possible.
In the short term?
Yeah, what I was thinking is when I'm a little bit further on, when I'm getting closer to having things spinning, yeah, we'll do that. It's a good idea. Yeah, okay, we can do that.
I'd love to see it again.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, can do.
And you're using a leaf pack, is that correct?
Yeah, they're the leaf cells. They're Gen 1 leaf cells, which I've had for about 8 years. This is the second car they've been in. I've also got some Samsung SDI batteries that I got off Jeff. We're going to try those as well, but I've only got one, so I'm still figuring those out.
I've also potentially been offered Aldo's Vectrix.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that will need about 5 leaf modules in order to get it going again.
It's a 48-volt system?
Yes, I believe so.
So I run 7 leaf cells in the V-Moto, which makes it 56 volts, I think it is.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I put 8 cells in it and blew it up and had to fix it and bring it back down in voltage. But you probably get away with 6 or 7 leaf cells.
Okay. It's just going to be another fun project. You always need one project ahead of you, so you've got something to look forward to.
Okay. So, anyone else got projects they want to talk about?
Not exactly car related, but I am fitting out the Caddy with a solar and battery setup with a charger inverter. Yeah, it's only 150 amp hours of 24 volt on this. So, yeah, not for traction yet.
Mark, how's your range extender going for the Leaf?
I'm hoping to make some progress on Father's Day.
Father's Day?
Yeah.
You're coming to Bundanoon.
No.
Why Father's Day in particular?
Because I'll be buying some stuff there.
He's got a present. He can buy himself a present.
Yeah.
Okay. Specifically, what stuff are you buying?
I need contactors and some wiring, plugs. That's it, pretty much.
Because you've got a shitload of 18650s, haven't you?
Yes. Well, we've hit some snags with that. But,
what's that?
Still hoping to get through it.
What were the snags?
Recycling issues.
The supply is dried up.
Yeah. We're not
So I thought you hit up Aldi to. I thought you hit up Aldi and got virtually every battery.
Yeah, I've got that pack. That's only a little one. That's only about 1.5 kilowatt hours.
So what about the Northern Territory batteries that we talked about?
I talked about. I think you're mixing me up with someone else.
No. You remember you had a supply from the Northern Territory for what was basically a satellite version of Wi-Fi, and that you were able to get batteries that were disposed of from there.
I think you're mixing me up with someone else, Greg.
Okay.
I'm just sharing the other module. I've got this Samsung SDI battery, which I know very little about, except that I think that's a 30 volt block, I think. Just sharing the picture. I need to figure out a bit more about it.
But you built the box for it.
Well, I figured might as well. And the box is fairly simple. So, and if it doesn't work for that battery, then I'll just stick the Leaf ones down there as well. Fitting the Leaf in the petrol tank underneath was a real pain, whereas this thing's a nice, neat package, and I can fit 2 in there, giving me another 60 volts, taking me up to about 370, I think it was. So it just seemed to be a nice package, as long as I can get it to run happily with the BMS, and then I'll run 2 different types of batteries, the Leaf and these things, which I'm not super scared of, but it's a little bit unusual. I've done worse.
Does anyone know where I could get 6 or 7 Leaf cells in order to put into the Vectrix?
I might have some. I'd have to count. I'd have to look.
You got some spares, have you?
I might do. I'd have to have a look. I'm not sure if it's 6 or 7. I might have a couple.
Whatever's needed, yeah.
What's this, Greg?
Sorry?
The Vectrix? What's that?
That's the scooter that Aldo owned at one stage.
Oh, that thing, okay.
And he then passed it on to Mark. Mark tested it, and the batteries were 0.00 volts. So it basically just needs another traction battery. And I believe a lot of people put Leaf cells in because they fit perfectly. And it's an easy switch. Having said that, I don't have a motorbike license, but that's just a technicality.
Reasonably easy.
Oh, listen, we all need our projects, don't we?
Indeed.
Well, Michael, I have a few things to talk about if the opportunity is there.
I think the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, anyway, as far as the Bundanoon things go, there is there's the notes at the end of the agenda. So there's some stuff there as well as on Facebook. Now, one of the things that's happening on Monday. I'm giving a talk on intellectual property and the right to repair at the City Mechanics School of Arts. I've posted that notice to the Facebook group. So as well as that, I have actually reached out to the Australian Automotive Aftermarket Association and the Bauer Repair Centre and so on. So who knows, maybe this will sort of develop a bit of momentum. And yes, I'm still working on the i3. I'm waiting for Jeff to get in touch with his automotive engineer associate to actually do a report on the car, in which case I will take things from there. So I can only say, if you bump into Jeff, encourage him to sort of move on.
Help Greg.
We want John's project to be finished at some stage.
Well, the thing is, I'm sure it's taking up space in Jeff's backyard, but it's
John,
got a lot of
the
got a lot
Enfield
of
takes priority.
Yeah.
The Enfield takes priority.
No, the i3 takes priority. It's worth more.
Oh, bugger the i3. The Enfield's a classic.
It's worth more and it looks better. There you go.
No. The Enfield owes me over 30 grand, but it's worth more.
Anyway, look, I can talk about some other projects. I am working on the Tesla communication between the EVSE and the Tesla, so you can pretend that you're a Tesla when you connect up to one of those things. Jeff's also got an i3 controller, which we want to use in his ute to sort of control music and stuff. Because I've mentioned this before, much as I have a lot of criticisms to make about the i3, the ergonomics of their control system were superb, and I will give them that. Another thing I'm also working on is a gadget for figuring out the wheel alignment. Now, it's probably not going to be accurate enough to actually do an absolute wheel alignment, but I'm hopeful that if you set it up in your garage at a particular location, make a measurement after your car wheels have been aligned, you'll be able to tell that they've gone off the original alignment.
So you don't have to get it aligned again by a professional?
I think you'll be pushing it to like actually align the wheels with it, but you'll be able to know if they've gone off alignment.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
So to tell you some of the details, it's using an accelerometer, which gives you a highly accurate digital spirit level, I guess you might say. And that can be done to like really astounding degrees of accuracy. But, the other things are that it also gets very hard to figure out the rotation of the wheel. That's hard. Maybe you can use magnetism to do that and the point of the compass. But the problem is the car's this large lump of metal that distorts your magnetic readings. But again, I'm hoping not to make an absolute measurement, but more a measurement relative of difference. And it's my hope that the metal of the car will not distort that relative measure, though certainly making absolute measures will be hard. But, that would be a cute thing if I could have something that lets you check the change in your wheel alignment. I think it'll be hard to measure absolute wheel alignment, but I am hopeful I can measure changes from you just have the car's wheel aligned and take that measurement and use that as a reference point. So there's a few projects that I'm working on. But I do hope this whole thing with right to repair and so on, that will actually take off and develop some, notability on my part, and we'll see how that goes.
Come to a landing.
Say again?
Come to a landing. So, close that chapter.
So that's the end of the agenda. So I'll just unmute everyone.
Oh, Chris has got his arm up, I can see.
Not drowning waving.
Yeah, can you hear me, guys?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so I mentioned at our last gathering the idea of having an EV display in conjunction with a film at Manildra in the Central West. And I've approached the theatre and they're receptive. And they've already chosen their regular films for September and October, but they've given me 2 dates in October. And I'm going to explore those on the 11th or the 25th of October. So the idea is that the vehicles would arrive around midday, and we'd have a display, and then at 1:30 the film would start, and then people would local people could come along, and those other patrons that want to examine the vehicles could then have a look at the vehicles and then go to the movie. I'm not anticipating a real big event. The theatre only can seat 63 under the current COVID restrictions. So I'm only looking to probably have around half a dozen vehicles out the front. And I think I'll probably be able to source most of those locally from the Dubbo, Orange and Bathurst area. But certainly anybody's welcome to come along and join us. As soon as the dates are confirmed, I'll pass them through to you, Michael, and you can circulate them. And
Perfect.
I'll post something on the usual usual website.
Let us know, and we'll let everyone. We'll pass it on. Let everyone know.
Yeah. So and something I'm conscious of, and John might need to think about at Bundanoon. We want to be a little bit careful that we're not making an event too large, because then we start to attract attention of some of the regulatory bodies in terms of the number of people that might be gathered in close proximity, for example, looking at vehicles or whatever the case may be. So we are still under some COVID restrictions at the moment. Yeah.
Well, I am hoping that if people check out the cars at Bundanoon, we'll have to enforce the whole, 1.5 metre distance, and at least be responsible at our end, and hope that the locals are also responsible. But I would broadly say, shall we say, what you might call regular members of the Bundanoon community will want this to work. They'll want it to be a success, so they'll want to be responsible. You can always have your irresponsible people, but hopefully they will be in the minority. As I say, people who are on board with this, I think, will behave responsibly.
And I get the same impression from the Manildra people, if you know what I mean. They're very aware of this. Yeah.
And another thing I'll mention, it is a bit ambiguous if you check out the New South Wales government website. On the one hand, it says that holidays are legal within New South Wales. You can even stay overnight. And then it tells you off about making unnecessary journeys. So if you're going on a holiday, I guess you've got to make a journey. But the question is whether the holiday was necessary or not. So I can only say there's a bit of ambiguity in the website. My best interpretation of that is that some action, if it helped boost the economy sufficiently, it's perhaps worth the risk. But it's a trade-off between the competing issues. But the government hasn't really articulated that thought on their website.
Yeah, at this stage, I don't have a local Ionic. So if there's an Ionic owner that's looking for a road trip, that'd be great. So,
I'll keep that in mind, Chris. Perhaps I can get myself out there. Well, to be sure, before the whole COVID thing, you could probably tell I was someone who really did love jumping in my car and just going somewhere. I really did that. I liked doing that. I did it quite regularly, but I've all gone into hibernation. The most I've gone is travelled in Wollongong and the Blue Mountains and so on. But anyway, we will see. That does sound appealing, Chris, I must say.
Yeah. Some of you may be aware I've just returned from a trip to Broken Hill and out to Silverton, and I've posted a few photos around the place. So certainly road trips can be done even under the current conditions.
All right. Well, Chris, I must say that's inspirational. I must just jump in my car and go somewhere. We'll see what I can do.
Well, that's what it's about, isn't it? That we've got cars, we should drive cars, we should go places. So it's a car club, we should drive. Anyone else?
Yeah, sure.
I think Jason wants to share something.
Okay.
So I had this problem with my i3 where...
tell me about it.
where I would lose half of this screen when I was in Apple CarPlay. And
bloody Apple stuff, I'm not
anyway,
surprised.
I live by Apple because I work out of my car, my i3, and it was very important that it works.
It's an I like the iPhones.
Yeah, well, anyway, so then I was talking to people overseas, and this dude gave me this feature pack installer. And using this Ethernet to ODB2 cable, we were able to deploy a script that reprogrammed the dash. If I can show the next photo.
Oh my God, you're lucky you didn't break the car, gosh.
Yeah, everyone in my office was just like, you're letting some dude log into your car and, redo it. But anyway, for $20 US, he deployed the script, and it's actually kind of crazy. Like, now I've got this package called the Remote Feature Installer, and apparently all you got to do is type in these codes and you can activate any feature. And it's actually features that are not part of any of those Brimmer code tools or anything. There's a whole thing on it, and I've got the cable. So anyway, if anyone's got an i3.
So those are the codes that normally only the chief executive of BMW is able to use, right?
Yeah.
Well, that'd be a paid feature.
It's epic now.
It's similar to VCC, was it VCDS on the Volkswagens?
I don't know what that is. What is that?
It's basically a coding application that you can pretty much program anything in a Volkswagen.
Oh, yeah.
But I guess you've got the full features. You've got every available option now that you can turn on.
Anything that's coded from their online store. So like active headlights, I'm getting the code for that next week. So I'm having active headlights turned on.
Wow.
It's like a $500 feature. Anyway.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
That's
Right to repair back into a
Yeah, man.
Oh,
I'm
on you,
repairing.
mate. On you.
Oh, and I got my tires fitted to the BMW yesterday for the nice grand total of $349 each.
I must say.
Is it?
For i3s, it's a good deal. Maybe not for
I
a
thought it
regular
was a
car.
total ripoff.
Yeah.
That software might be able to do coding for upgrading of chargers, because you know how some of the pre-2015 model vehicles had like CCS1, or you know, if you add a module, you could potentially program it through that software if you had the codes.
One and CCS2 are identical electrically. All you need is the plug.
I can't hear you.
They're actually identical electrically. All you need is the plug.
Oh yeah. Actually, I think that one you can get the upgrade. It was about I don't know $2,000 or something, or $1,500 from
doing it
being.
now.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. That's the plug one. But I'm talking about the module.
Active cruise control with steering assistance and stuff like that they want to charge me $5,000 to turn on.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, if you say upgrade the charger unit, not the cable, sorry, not the plug.
Anyway, this new cable that I got apparently runs scripts on the computer instead of ODB2 messages, so you can actually make changes to the ESCs instead of actually just reading the interfaces off the ESCs.
So there's still plenty of chances for you to brick your car.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Watch this space.
I remember
Jason's
playing
looking.
silly buggers in my car and turning on, and every light went on. And go, oh shit!
But since Jason works in IT, he'll have to tell himself to turn it off and on.
Well, I witnessed John August's car break down with his little modification. So.
A bit embarrassing, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, yeah.
Looks like people are flaking.
Time to go. All right. So there will be another meeting of some description, a casual meeting in September, mid-September, and our next formal meeting will be in October. And then fingers crossed that'll be a physical meeting.
Cool.
That'd be great if we could.
Yeah, it'd be novel.
It's been a long time since we've had a beer and a steak.
Yes.
What do you mean? These guys they're stealing all my beers.
Not around my wine. What are you talking about?
All right.
What are you guys drinking?
Hey, James.
Hey, guys.
I saw something being poured.
I'll say a quick hi.
Hi, James.
I've had a bit of an accident in the Model 3 this week. So that's been the news from this end.
Damage done?
Yeah, I got taken out by a truck. So.
Is it fatal or is it just damage?
No, it's just damage. I'll see if I can share.
You got pictures?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the stand-up scooter is fatal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not going to buff out, is it?
I don't know if this will work, but
Oh yeah,
see that?
Yeah, camera system. Oh, look at that.
Nudge, yeah.
So, and the bastard didn't even stop.
Did he stop?
He
Get his
just
number
carried on.
plate.
And Kazam.
Bam.
Oh, look.
So,
As well.
Was the dash cam sufficient to get number plates?
yeah. It was the dash cam was the savior because we got the license plates, and the police are right there. They looked it up with some guy who's leased a truck, so insurance can chase that up.
Wow.
See how we go. But if you have a Model 3 and you don't have a USB stick in it, then get one in there because that's you never know when you need it.
Unfortunately, the scooter that I bought from you has died.
It's too late to return it. I think the warranty is gone.
Listen, yeah, what is the warranty on that? You know, is there any refund policy?
Yeah, you got to return it to Europe.
When the government lets me come back into the country.
There is that.
Yeah, the
You'll
front
never be able
tire
to
went
return to Australia
split.
now, James.
The front tire
Sorry?
split horizontally, and
Oh.
the rear tire went, as smooth as a baby's bottom, and the front light also started deciding to turn on and off, periodically. particularly when you're on a downhill slope on a footpath.
Right. It sounded a bit crook.
Yeah,
Hey,
it
Greg,
was
you better not
deadly.
take that to your learn and rider course.
No. Unfortunately, that thing had to go out with the rubbish.
Yeah.
I
Did you
tried
keep
to
the
get
batteries
the
at
wheels
least?
for it as well, but it was impossible.
All right. I think I've got to go. So
All right, we'll end the meeting.
we'll see you again next month.
All right, gentlemen. Good to see you
All right,
all.
guys.
Yeah.
See you
Cheerio.
all.
Thanks, everyone.